Most people believe confidence is something you're born with. They look at powerful people and assume they were wired differently, luckier, stronger, more gifted. That belief feels harmless, but it's destroying potential every single day because confidence is not a personality trait. It's not luck. It's not genetics. And it's definitely not reserved for a chosen few. Confidence is a trained state. And once you understand the science behind how confidence is built in your body, your brain, and your identity, you stop waiting to feel confident and you start creating it on command. Most people walk through life believing confidence is something you either have or you don't. They think it's a fixed trait, like eye color or height. They say, I've just never been confident, as if that sentence explains everything and excuses anything. And the moment they say it, their nervous system locks it in as truth. But listen to me carefully, because this is where the misunderstanding begins and where your power comes back. Confidence is not who you are. Confidence is a state you enter. Think about it. Have you ever felt confident in one area of your life but completely uncertain in another? Confident with friends but not in business. Confident at work but not in relationships. Confident one day, doubting yourself the next. If confidence were a personality trait, it would show up everywhere all the time. But it doesn't. Because it's not permanent, it's conditional. And anything that's conditional can be trained. What most people call confidence is simply a predictable response from the brain based on past experience. Your brain is a pattern recognition machine. It doesn't care about your dreams. It doesn't care about your potential. Its primary job is survival. So it scans your history and asks one simple question: have we done this before, and did we survive? If the answer is yes, it sends you certainty. If the answer is no, or worse, if the memory includes pain, it sends you doubt, hesitation, and fear. That's not weakness. That's biology. Confidence is the brain saying, I know this pattern. Insecurity is the brain saying, this is unfamiliar. So when someone says, I'm not confident, what they're really saying is, my brain doesn't have enough evidence yet. And that changes everything, because evidence can be created. Most people try to build confidence by thinking positive thoughts. They repeat affirmations they don't believe. They tell themselves, I am confident, while their body is tense, their breathing is shallow, and their posture is collapsing inward. And then they wonder why it doesn't work, because your brain does not believe words. Your brain believes experience. Confidence is built the same way muscle is built, through repetition under tension, through action taken before certainty arrives, through doing the thing while the voice of doubt is still talking. Here's what you must understand. At a deep level, confidence does not come before action. It comes from action. People think confident people act because they feel confident. The truth is, confident people feel confident because they act. They move first. They step forward first. They train their nervous system to associate discomfort with growth instead of danger. Every time you do something you once avoided, you send a signal to your brain, I survived this. Every time you speak up when your voice shakes, you send another signal, I can handle this. Every time you keep your word to yourself, even in something small, you lay another brick in the foundation. Confidence is simply accumulated proof, and the proof doesn't need to be massive. That's another lie people believe, that you need a big win to feel confident. You don't. You need consistent wins, even tiny ones. The brain doesn't measure size. It measures repetition. That's why someone who keeps promises to themselves in small things walks differently. They stand differently. They speak differently. Their body knows something their mind doesn't even articulate yet. I can trust myself. Now let's break one more myth that keeps people stuck. Many believe confidence means the absence of fear. They say, once I'm confident, I won't be afraid anymore. That's nonsense. Confidence and fear can exist in the same moment. Confidence is not the absence of fear. Confidence is the decision that something else is more important than fear. Fear is a biological response. Confidence is a learned response. When you repeatedly act in the presence of fear, fear loses its authority. It doesn't disappear, but it stops being in charge. And this is where training comes in. You train confidence the same way elite performers train anything else, deliberately, consistently, and intentionally. You don't wait for the right mood. You don't wait for certainty. You condition your nervous system to respond with strength instead of retreat. Most people let their emotions control their actions. Confident people reverse the equation. They let their actions reshape their emotions. Think about the moments in your life when you felt unstoppable. You didn't stumble into that state by accident. Something shifted in your body. Your breathing changed. Your focus narrowed. Your movements became decisive. And once your body changed, your mind followed. That means confidence is not something you wait for. It's something you activate. And once you understand this, you stop asking, how do I become confident? You start asking, what state must I enter right now? Because the moment you take control of your state, your posture, your breath, your movement, you take control of how you show up, and how you show up determines what you attempt. And what you attempt determines the evidence you collect. This is a loop. And you're either reinforcing doubt or reinforcing certainty. People with low confidence aren't broken. They're just well trained in hesitation and avoidance and second guessing. And anything that's been trained can be retrained. You don't need to change who you are. You need to change what you repeatedly do. Confidence is not a label you wear. It's a muscle you build. And once you stop treating it like a personality trait and start treating it like a skill, everything changes, because skills can be practiced, strengthened, and mastered. So remember this and let it land deeply. Confidence is not something you wait to feel. It's something you train yourself to become, one decisive action at a time. If confidence is a state, then the fastest way to change that state is not by arguing with your thoughts, but by taking command of your body. Most people spend their lives trying to think their way into confidence. They wait for the mind to feel ready, for doubt to disappear, for certainty to arrive. And while they wait, their body is already sending a completely different message to the brain, one of tension, hesitation, and contraction. Your body is always speaking first. Before you say a word, before you make a decision, before you even label an emotion, your physiology has already set the tone. The way you breathe, the way you hold your shoulders, the speed at which you move, the tension in your jaw. These are not random details. They are instructions. And your nervous system follows those instructions with absolute loyalty. When your breathing is shallow, your shoulders rounded, your chest collapsed, your body interprets that posture as threat. It doesn't matter if the threat is real or imagined. The body doesn't differentiate. It responds by releasing stress hormones, narrowing focus, and preparing you to protect yourself. In that state, confidence is biologically impossible, not because you're weak, but because your body thinks it needs to survive, not perform. Now, here's the breakthrough most people never make. The process works in reverse. You don't need to wait for confidence to move your body. You move your body to create confidence. When you change your physiology, you change the chemical environment of your brain. Deep, rhythmic breathing signals safety and control. An upright posture expands the chest and increases oxygen intake. Purposeful movement increases blood flow and raises energy. And in seconds, not hours, not days, your nervous system recalibrates. This is not motivation, this is science. Your brain is constantly taking cues from the body to decide how to feel. That's why two people can face the same situation and have completely different emotional experiences. One collapses inward and feels overwhelmed. The other stands tall and feels challenged, even energized. Same event, different physiology, different outcome. Most people don't realize how much of the IR emotional life is being shaped by habits they never consciously chose. The way they sit when they think, the way they breathe when they're nervous, the way they slow down or freeze when uncertainty appears. Over time, those habits become patterns, and those patterns become identities. I'm just not confident. No, you've just trained your body to respond with hesitation. The incredible news is that physiology can be changed instantly. You don't need years of therapy to breathe differently. You don't need permission to stand differently. You don't need perfect circumstances to move with intention. Think about moments when you felt powerful. You didn't slouch your way into them. You didn't breathe shallow and tight. Your body expanded. Your movements were deliberate. Your energy was up and your mind followed. The body always leads. That's why elite performers, peak athletes, and high-level leaders have rituals. Not because they're superstitious, but because they understand state control. They don't hope to feel ready. They condition readiness through movement, breath, and focus. And here's the part most people miss. Confidence is not built in comfort. It's built in motion. When you feel uncertain, the instinct is to withdraw, to slow down, to shrink. But shrinking reinforces the very state you're trying to escape. Expansion does the opposite. When you move with certainty, even if you don't feel it yet, you send a powerful signal to your brain, I'm in control. That sight nail changes everything. Your voice deepens. Your thoughts become clearer. Your focus sharpens. Not because the problem disappeared, but because your nervous system is no longer overwhelmed by it. You were designed to move. Stillness under stress was never the plan. Action resets the system. And this is where confidence training becomes practical. You don't practice confidence in your head. You practice it in your body. You practice it when you walk into a room, when you sit down to do difficult work, when you have a hard conversation. You breathe deeply, you slow your movements, you ground your feet, you expand your posture. These are not performance tricks. They are neurological commands. Over time, your brain begins to associate challenge with strength instead of threat, discomfort with growth instead of danger. And what once triggered hesitation begins to trigger focus. This is how physiology reshapes psychology. Most people let their environment dictate their state. Confident people decide their state regardless of the environment. They don't deny fear. They override it with presence. And once you master this, confidence stops being fragile. It stops depending on praise, results, or perfect conditions. It becomes something you can access at will because it lives in your body, not in your circumstances. So the next time doubt shows up, don't negotiate with it. Don't analyze it. Don't wait for it to leave. Stand up, breathe deeply, move with intention. Because the moment you change your physiology, you change the story your brain tells, and confidence follows. Once you understand that confidence is a state you can enter, and that your body is the fastest way to change that state, the next question becomes simple but powerful. What actually locks confidence in place over time? Because temporary confidence is easy. Anyone can feel strong for a moment. The real question is how confidence becomes stable, reliable, unshakable, how it shows up even when life hits hard. The answer is belief, but not the kind of belief most people talk about. Most people think belief comes from positive thinking. They think if they repeat something enough times, it will eventually feel true. They stand in front of mirrors saying, I believe in myself, while a quieter voice inside says, no, you don't. And that inner conflict doesn't build confidence, it erodes it. Your brain is far too intelligent to be fooled by words alone. Belief is not created by hope. Belief is created by evidence. Every belief you hold right now about yourself, about money, about relationships, about what you're capable of, was built from experience. At some point, your brain collected enough proof and said, this is how it works. And once that conclusion was formed, it became the lens through which you interpret everything else. That means belief is not emotional. It's cumulative. Confidence, at its core, is simply the belief that you can handle whatever comes next. That belief doesn't come from avoiding difficulty. It comes from surviving difficulty again and again until your brain stops questioning your ability. Think about the things you're most confident doing. You don't hype yourself up before doing them. You don't need motivation. You don't doubt. Why? Because you've already done them enough times. Your brain has evidence. It doesn't debate what it already knows. Now think about where you lack confidence. It's always where evidence is missing, or where past experiences created the wrong conclusion. One failure can outweigh 10 successes if you never reinterpret it. One moment of embarrassment can become a lifelong identity if it's never challenged. And the brain, trying to protect you, says, let's avoid that next time. Avoidance feels safe in the short term, but it starves you of the very evidence that would build confidence. This is the trap. People wait to believe in themselves before they act, but belief only comes after action. That means the path to confidence often feels backward. You act while uncertain. You move while doubting. You speak while your voice shakes. And every time you do, you collect proof. Not proof that you were perfect, proof that you survived, proof that you adapted, proof that you're capable of learning, that proof compounds. Most people underestimate how powerful small evidence is. They think confidence comes from massive wins, big achievements, dramatic breakthroughs, public victories. But brain doesn't require drama. It requires consistency. When you keep a promise to yourself, your brain notices. When you show up when you said you would, it notices. When you finish what you start, even when it's uncomfortable, it notices. Each of these moments is a vote for a new belief. I can trust myself. And self-trust is the foundation of confidence. Without it, confidence collapses under pressure. With it, confidence holds, even when results aren't immediate. Now here's where most people unknowingly sabotage themselves. They dismiss their own progress. They minimize their wins. They focus obsessively on what they didn't do, what went wrong, what wasn't perfect. And in doing so, they train their brain to ignore evidence of strength and amplify evidence of weakness. Your brain believes what you consistently emphasize. If you replay failure, you strengthen the belief that you fail. If you replay effort, growth, and follow through, you strengthen the belief that you're capable. This isn't about lying to yourself. It's about accurately tracking reality. And the reality is, if you're still standing, you're stronger than you think. Confidence grows when you learn to frame experience correctly. Failure is not evidence that you're incapable. It's evidence that you're in the arena. And being in the arena is where confidence is built. The strongest, most confident people are not the ones who avoided failure. They're the ones who redefined what failure means. They stopped asking, did I succeed? And started asking, did I show up? Did I learn? Did I move forward? That shift alone changes everything, because once learning becomes the goal, action becomes easier. And once action becomes consistent, evidence accumulates naturally. Your brain begins to say, we've been here before. And with that familiarity comes calm. With calm comes clarity. With clarity comes confidence. This is why confidence cannot be borrowed from others. Praise feels good, but it fades. External validation is unstable. The only confidence that lasts is the confidence you build through lived experience. And here's the most empowering part. You don't need to rewrite your entire past to change your belief system. You only need to start stacking new evidence now. One decision kept, one hard conversation faced, one uncomfortable action taken. Confidence is built quietly, in moments no one applauds. And then one day people look at you and say, you're so confident, not realizing you earned it one piece of evidence at a time. So stop waiting to believe in yourself. Act first. Let the evidence follow. Because belief doesn't create confidence, evidence does. Once belief begins to form through evidence, something interesting happens. Fear doesn't disappear, but it starts to lose its grip. And this is where most people misunderstand fear and confidence completely. They think confidence means fear is gone. They believe that one day they'll wake up and feel fearless, and then they'll finally act. That day never comes, not because something is wrong with them, but because fear was never the enemy to begin with. Fear is not a stop sign. Fear is a signal. It shows up whenever you step outside what's familiar. It appears when growth is happening. And if fear disappeared entirely, you wouldn't be growing. You'd be stuck repeating the same patterns, the same comfort, the same limits. The problem isn't fear. The problem is contraction. When fear shows up, most people shrink. They hesitate. They pull back. Their body tightens. Their breath shortens. Their focus narrows to everything that could go wrong. And in that contracted state, fear feels overwhelming, not because it's powerful, but because they've given it all the space. Now here's the shift that changes everything. Fear shrinks when you expand. When you move forward instead of backward. When you act instead of avoid. When you take up space instead of collapsing inward. Fear cannot survive expansion. Think about it. The moments when fear dominated your life were moments when you stopped moving. You waited, you analyzed, you replayed worst-case scenarios in your mind. But the moments when fear faded weren't moments of certainty, they were moments of action. Action doesn't require fear to leave. Action makes fear irrelevant. When you take a step forward, your brain receives new information. It stops imagining and starts observing. It shifts from projection to participation. And participation changes your relationship with fear immediately. Fear thrives in anticipation. Confidence grows in engagement. This is why avoidance is so dangerous. Every time you avoid something out of fear, you teach your brain that fear was right. You reinforce the belief that discomfort equals danger. And that belief doesn't stay in one area, it spreads. You avoid one conversation and soon you avoid many. You avoid one challenge and soon challenges feel threatening. Your world gets smaller, not because you're incapable, but because fear has been given authority. But the opposite is also true. Every time you move toward what scares you, fear loses credibility. Not all at once, but steadily. Your brain learns, I can handle this. And once it learns that, fear stops being a barrier and becomes background noise. This doesn't mean reckless action. It means intentional expansion. You don't eliminate fear by jumping 10 levels ahead. You eliminate fear by stepping just beyond your current edge again and again. Each step stretches your comfort zone. Each stretch rewires your nervous system. And each repetition makes fear smaller. Most people wait to feel ready. Confident people act until they become ready. And here's the truth. Most people resist. Fear will never give you permission. It will never say, okay, now you're prepared. You must move without permission. The moment you do, something powerful happens. Your focus shifts from self-protection to problem solving. From what if I fail to what do I do next? And that shift alone creates momentum. Momentum is confidence in motion. When you're moving, even imperfectly, your energy rises. Your physiology expands. Your belief strengthens. And fear no longer feels like a wall. It feels like resistance you're pushing through. This is why action is the great separator. Everyone wants confidence. Few are willing to take the actions that produce it while fear is present. But understand this, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the decision to act with fear in the room. Fear doesn't disappear when you face it. It transforms. It turns into alertness, focus, intensity. The same energy that once held you back becomes fuel when you stop fighting it and start moving through it. And the more you do this, the faster fear shrinks. What once felt terrifying becomes uncomfortable. What once felt uncomfortable becomes familiar. What once felt familiar becomes easy. This is the process. Confidence is not built by thinking about fear. It's built by outgrowing it. And you outgrow fear the same way you outgrow anything, by stepping into bigger versions of yourself, by expanding your actions, your presence, your willingness. So the next time fear shows up, don't ask, how do I get rid of this? Ask, what's the smallest action that moves me forward right now? Take that step, because fear only feels big when you stand still, and it shrinks the moment you move. As you continue to act, as you gather evidence, as you move through fear instead of waiting for it to disappear, something deeper begins to shift. Confidence stops being something you generate in moments and starts becoming something you live from. This is where confidence moves from a state you visit to an identity you inhabit. And this is the level where it becomes unshakable. Most people try to change their behavior without ever changing who they believe they are. They say, I want to be more confident, but underneath that desire is an identity that says, I'm not that kind of person. And no matter how motivated they feel in the moment, identity always wins. You will never consistently act in a way that contradicts the person you believe yourself to be. That's why short bursts of confidence fade. They're built on effort, not identity. Identity is the filter through which you see the world. It determines what you attempt, what you tolerate, what you walk away from, and what you fight for. It decides what feels natural and what feels forced. And most people never consciously choose their identity. They inherit it from past experiences, labels, failures, and opinions that were never meant to define them forever. At some point, someone told them who they were, or they told themselves after a painful experience. And over time, that story hardened into fact. I'm shy. I'm not a leader. I'm just not confident. Those aren't descriptions. They're decisions, often unconscious ones. Here's the truth that changes everything. Identity is not discovered. It's designed. You are not stuck with who you've been. You are shaped by what you repeatedly do and what you repeatedly reinforce. And every time you act in alignment with a stronger version of yourself, you cast a vote for a new identity. Identity is built from behavior, not the other way around. Most people think, once I feel confident, I'll start acting like a confident person. That's backwards. You act like a confident person, and your identity adjusts to match the pattern. The brain hates inconsistency. When your actions consistently contradict your old story, the story must change. This is why consistency matters so much, not for results alone, but for identity formation. When you consistently speak up, even when it's uncomfortable, you stop seeing yourself as someone who stays quiet. When you consistently follow through, you stop seeing yourself as someone who quits. When you consistently face challenges, you stop seeing yourself as someone who avoids. And one day, without fanfare, without a dramatic moment, you realize something powerful. This is just who I am now. That's confidence at the identity level. At this level, confidence no longer depends on outcomes. You don't need to win every time. You don't need external validation. You don't even need to feel good every day, because your confidence is anchored in who you know yourself to be, not in what just happened. This is also why confident people recover faster from setbacks. A setback doesn't threaten their identity, it challenges their strategy. They don't think, I failed, so I am a failure. They think, that didn't work, what's the next move? Their sense of self remains intact. Now contrast that with someone whose identity is fragile. One mistake feels personal. One rejection feels defining. One loss feels like proof they were never enough. That's not because they're weak. It's because their identity is conditional. Unshakable confidence comes from unconditional identity. When you define yourself by effort, growth, and integrity rather than outcomes, confidence stabilizes. You become someone who shows up, not someone who only shows up when it's easy. And here's the most important part. Identity is reinforced by language. The way you speak about yourself, internally and externally, matters. When you say, I'm trying to be confident, you're reinforcing the idea that confidence is outside of you. When you say, I'm becoming someone who acts despite fear, you're shaping identity in real time. This isn't about pretending, it's about precision. You don't claim an identity you haven't earned. You build it through behavior and then name it. That's how it sticks. Your standards also play a massive role here. What you tolerate becomes who you are. If you tolerate hesitation, inconsistency, and avoidance, those traits quietly become part of your identity. But when you raise your standards for how you act under pressure, your identity rises to meet them. Confidence grows fastest when your standards are higher than your moods. You don't wait to feel like a confident person to act. You act according to the standards of the person you're becoming. And over time, those standards harden into identity. This is why confident people don't ask, can I handle this? They ask, who do I need to be right now? And then they step into that version, even if it feels unfamiliar at first. That unfamiliarity is growth. So if you want confidence that lasts, stop chasing the feeling. Start building the identity. Decide who you are through what you repeatedly do. Let your actions speak louder than your doubts, because once confidence becomes part of who you are, it's no longer something you can lose. It's something you live. When confidence becomes part of your identity, the final piece that determines whether it lasts or fades is conditioning. Because identity, like muscle, either strengthens with use or weakens with neglect. Confidence is not something you build once and keep forever. It's something you condition daily, deliberately, consistently. Most people assume confident people wake up confident. They don't. They wake up human. They wake up with doubts, emotions, and distractions just like everyone else. The difference is that they have trained their nervous system to return to strength quickly. They've rehearsed confidence so often that it's their default. That's conditioning. Your brain is always practicing something. The question is, what are you practicing? Hesitation or decisiveness, avoidance or engagement, self-doubt or self-trust. Every repeated behavior wires the nervous system. Every repeated emotional response becomes easier to access next time. Over time, what was once effort becomes automatic. This is why people say, I don't know why I react this way. It just happens. Of course it does. It's been trained. Confidence works the same way. When you consistently enter a confident state, through physiology, through action, through evidence, through identity, you teach your nervous system, this is how we respond. And eventually it stops asking for permission. It just goes there. Conditioning begins with rituals, not complicated routines. Simple, intentional actions you repeat regardless of mood. How you start your morning, how you prepare before challenges, how you reset after setbacks. These moments might seem small, but they shape your emotional baseline. When you move your body every morning, you condition energy. When you breathe deeply under pressure, you condition calm. When you review progress instead of problems, you condition belief. You're not just doing actions, you're installing responses. Most people wait for life to put them in a good state. Confident people put themselves in a good state before life tests them. And here's what makes conditio powerful. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between real and rehearsed experience. Visualization, repetition, and emotional intensity all wire the brain as if the event actually happened. That means you can practice confidence before you ever need it. You don't wait for the moment to arrive, you train for it. Athletes don't walk onto the field and hope they perform well. They've already seen themselves succeed thousands of times in their minds. They've already felt the movements, the pressure, the execution. When the moment comes, their body recognizes it. Confidence responds the same way. When you rehearse how you'll show up in difficult conversations, your body learns. When you practice assertiveness in small moments, your nervous system adapts. When you repeatedly put yourself in controlled discomfort, your tolerance expands. Discomfort becomes familiar. Familiar becomes safe. Safe becomes powerful. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. A single surge of motivation doesn't condition confidence. Repeated exposure does. And consistency doesn't mean perfection. It means returning to the standard again and again. You will have off days. You will doubt yourself. That doesn't erase conditioning. It tests it. And each time you reset instead of retreat, the conditioning deepens. One of the biggest mistakes people make is breaking the chain after a setback. They think, I lost confidence, when really they just stopped practicing it. Confidence didn't leave. They did. The fastest way back is not analysis. It's action. Move your body. Control your breath. Do one thing you've been avoiding. Conditioning is restored through engagement. Over time, something remarkable happens. Confidence stops feeling like effort. It becomes your baseline. You don't need to psych yourself up. You don't need external reassurance. Your nervous system knows this territory. And when pressure hits, you don't collapse. You rise. Not because you're fearless, but because you're trained. This is where confidence becomes quiet, grounded, stable. It's no longer about proving anything. It's about presence. You trust yourself. You trust your ability to adapt. You trust your conditioning. And trust creates calm. The ultimate goal is not constant confidence. It's resilient confidence. The kind that bends but doesn't break. The kind that returns quickly. the kind that shows up even on hard days, that confidence isn't built in one moment of inspiration. It's built in thousands of small decisions to practice strength over comfort. So condition your confidence the way you condition your body. Train it when it's easy so it's there when it's hard. Repeat the state until it becomes familiar. Repeat the actions until they become automatic, because what you practice becomes permanent, and confidence is no exception.